What's up, guys? It's your host, Hao Tran. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vietcetera, and welcome to the second edition of our Homecoming series. This is a very special series for us here at Vietcetera because it really represents the identity of how Vietcetera was born and kind of some of the missions related to our company, which is to bring Vietnam to the world and the world to Vietnam. So today we've invited a few guests of ours. I'll allow them to share their intros in a little bit, but I'll do a brief one now. We have Chris Tran. He's one of the partners at Infinity Blockchain Ventures based here in Ho Chi Minh City. We have Bill Nguyen. He's the CTO of AIA, the life insurance company, which of course today is also sponsoring today's webinar. So big thanks to our friends at AIA, always at the forefront of innovation, kind of sharing news stories and being more than just a life insurance company. And then we have Tyven Lin. She is, I think, needs no introductions really, but if she wants to share again later, she's an entrepreneur, investor. In a former life, she used to work in private equity and venture capital. She's one of the more visible personalities in all of Vietnam. And of course, we have Tracy Doe as well. She is the head of HR at Shopee and AirPay, one of the more fastest growing kind of companies, not just e-commerce, but companies in all of Southeast Asia. So that's today's group, and all of them have very interesting stories. Tracy's worked in Africa, Lin Tai's worked in Vietnam for many years. Bill is leading a very, very large insurance company, kind of building out that digital advantage in their industry. Chris Tran, blockchain, some of you probably don't even know what that is. Obviously one of the more exciting industries though, given current state of affairs. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight into it, guys. Homecoming, what is this concept? We're all about Vietnamese who are either were born in Vietnam and studied abroad and came back. And then we have a group of Vietnamese who also were born overseas and are now moving to Vietnam, like myself. I'll kind of start off with maybe Lin Tai. Lin Tai, I think your story's out there here and there, but we'd love to hear a bit more as well. Why did you choose to leave in the first place? I think you moved here, in kind of in the middle, not the middle of your career, but at a point where you had some experience, you had multiple graduate school experience as well. What motivated you to leave everything behind in the US and come to Vietnam?
Okay, yeah, great. Hello, everybody. Very happy to be here. So let's see. So I guess I'll do a very quick synopsis of what I did before coming to Vietnam, and then hopefully that will transition into why I left. So let's see, I was born in Vietnam. Parents took me to the US when I was 2, grew up mostly in California, and went to college in LA, majored in business. After business, after undergrad, I started working at a startup, did marketing for about 5 years, then went to business school, then went to do investment banking in New York. So from there, I thought, okay, now I'm about 30 years old, and I wanted to do something different with my life. I felt like life was getting a little bit boring, if you will. Life in the US gets to be very stable. And so I wanted to do something where I either can explore something new and maybe try living in Vietnam and explore my roots, or I wanted to do venture capital because as far as my career goes, I've had 5 years at a startup, and then I had 2 years in investment banking. So I thought finance and startup, they would kind of equal venture capital. And so, luckily I reached out to one of my friends from business school, and she was already working in Vietnam at a fund that had an opening in their venture capital group. And so I guess luck, fate had it that I was able to come to Vietnam and do venture capital. And so, I took the plunge. That was in 2006. Actually, no, sorry, that was 2008. And when I left, everybody was wondering, why would you leave? Your big bonus is coming up. And I just thought it's now or never, right? Like there's always something keeping you where you are. Right. Obviously, a paycheck is the hardest addiction to break. A paycheck with a big bonus is a much more difficult habit to break. But I figured, you just got to do it. So I left, and a couple months later, Lehman crashed, and I got a bunch of emails from people wondering, how I knew this would happen, and of course I was like, yeah,
Combination of good timing, obviously opportunity, and just a desire to experience something new. that really leveraged your skill set too. It sounds like. I tell a lot of overseas Vietnamese who are, living abroad right now, and they're always asking probably you and me and the others on today's call about what really drives them to come back. And it's not always money, I can tell you that. And you know that too, Lynn. You probably took a pay cut coming to Vietnam. Although with that said, salaries are on the rise in Vietnam too. And I'm sure people like Tracy, as the head of HR of a very large organization, she's managing that on a daily basis. Which moves me to our next speaker here today, Tracy. I mentioned you lived in Africa before. I remember you told me, and that was unexpected. You worked at McKinsey, I believe, on the recruitment team, and then you're now at Shopee, one of the fastest growing companies in all of Southeast Asia. We'd love to hear from you, and I actually don't know your story too much personally. You've lived abroad for a long time, and you're back in Vietnam, leading one of the bigger organizations at the forefront of innovation. What drove you to come back to Vietnam here?
Thanks, Thảo. Hello, everyone. I was born in Saigon. I moved to Singapore for university. I stayed in Singapore for a long time, working for different companies until I ended up in McKinsey. But actually, I started with McKinsey in Hanoi, and then I moved to McKinsey in Singapore. That's my longest tenure. The Singapore is my the office that I stayed for the longest with McKinsey, and then after that I moved to Africa, Kenya specifically for a short while, still with McKinsey. So my journey with McKinsey is always about like going to a new office, going to a new industry, a new practice, to do something new. And at the end of the 6-year journey with McKinsey, I say, oh, wow, so I wanted to come home. And then that was 2015 when Vietnam was kind of booming with like technology startups. And it looks much more exciting than Singapore, which is more established, more organized. I guess that like I'm so into something that's a little bit chaotic, disorganized, like Vietnam living standard. So I decided to move back to Saigon, and I started working in technology companies. I think that is one of the best decisions so far in my life, that I came back at a really right time when the industry started picking up with a lot of new companies. I started with Lazada for a short 1 year before taking a break, and then moving to Shopee and seeing the company grow from a very small startup when nobody knew about it until a biggest e-commerce platform today.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you were born in Vietnam and you moved abroad, and a lot of the Vietnamese that I know that have had that opportunity sometimes stay abroad, especially at people at your stage of career, right? Because the opportunity cost is so massive at that point, and the gap in maybe quality of life at that time was so large. But now living in Vietnam, not only there are great job opportunities, but the quality of life is also, in my opinion, better than anywhere else. I mean, me personally, I used to live in San Francisco, and I paid the same amount of rent to live in a 6-bedroom home than my now 1-bedroom apartment. So anyways, that's just one example. Thank you for sharing, Tracy. I'm going to move over to Bill here. Bill, Cto of Aia, also a very large organization based here in Vietnam. They've been here for some time, but of course the legacy of Aia extends much beyond that. Bill, Cto of Aia, are you guys, that implies you're obviously in tech, but you would think you're in life insurance, or maybe you're in both. What is that digital advantage that you guys are trying to kind of put out for messaging at your company? And more importantly, actually going back to the initial question, what drove you as a CTO and tech background to come here to Vietnam and kind of continue your career?
Okay, so my story is similar to Linh. I think I was born in Vietnam, left when I was 10, go back to France, and then grew up studying and working there. And then I decided to come back. I think it's the same story. I was very bored of France because everything was similar. Everything is, straight is wake up, go to work, get home, get a drink, and then sleep. I think it's at the end of the day, it wasn't as enjoying as I would see it. So and at this time I was working for Alcatel, which is big groups, and I was supporting global. So I spend most of my time traveling and spending more time in the hotel and flight than at my own house. So I decided to change. Initially, I come back in 2006 to Vietnam for vacation, and I was thinking that should be time for me to go somewhere else. But after looking at this 2006, I don't think the market was ready at this time for people like me to come back and move on new adventure. So I go back, and then 3 years later, 2009, again back to Vietnam for vacation. 3 years later, and I find that the market has much more mature, and there where the booming was coming in. I did see that a lot of technology, a lot of investment was coming in, and the digital transformation was there, and the demand of talent was really high. So I was thinking that was a good option. So again, I just have a friend that's sending my CV, go back to France. Just a day that I land in France, they call me Singapore. So IBM Singapore called me, and I get all of my interviews online. So I never see my face. I go back to Vietnam, and then I stay there. Initially, it was only three years. Well, only my plan was only 3 years. Now it's 11 years in Vietnam, and I enjoy it. I really enjoy the opportunities in Vietnam. So I work for IBM, and then I work for a startup, Japanese startup. I found my own startup, and then I moved to AIA over the last 4 years now to take over all of the digital transformation and the journey.
Awesome.
So that was the past.
Yeah, I think, people say it's hard to move somewhere, but I actually think it's harder to stay here. The milestone is like 2-3 years when you check in, or is it we continue here? So it's great to hear that, after your first 3 years, you decided to stay. There's usually some maybe attrition or something doesn't work out. And a lot of it is not just professional, it's also lifestyle, but it's getting better. I think tons of more opportunities. Quality of life here is exceptional. You have more access to things than you would somewhere else. So it's great to hear that obviously worked out for you too, Bill. Bill, Lynn, and Tracy, lots of experience. They moved back here at the right time, meaning this was 6, 10, 15, whatever years ago. And they were all born in Vietnam too. Chris, your story is, I think, a little bit different. You work in a industry that's obviously very novel, very, very new. Would love to hear about your story too. I actually have no idea what your story is, so I'm very curious myself.
Sure. I think my story is a little bit mix of everyone here. So I was born here in Vietnam. And I think my story up to this point is all about, defining myself and having a unique exposure to everything. So my background is in finance, but actually right now I'm doing tech and everything, digital and stuff. Regarding where I go to school, I used to go to high school in Singapore, university in the States, and then my master in New Zealand, and I'm working in Singapore and Malaysia. Actually, I crossed over a little bit with Shopee and Garena as a group a long time ago, even before Tracy probably know about Shopee. I was in the team to did the IPO evaluation for Shopee when actually the company submit for IPO in New York Stock Exchange. I think that was like 7 years ago. And then, get on with blockchain and, Infinity Blockchain Ventures. We're actually a blockchain solution company. So basically, we selling blockchain software for whoever need it, put it in simple terms. And also, we also running a tech community, a little bit similar to Vietcetera, but more to tech, audience. So we talk to people on the tech industry, let them to share the story, how they transform business and everything. But I think, being able to, was able to live in many different countries, I always have a very big heart for Vietnam, because I think the market really needs a lot of, extra push to go further. That's number one. And number two, I think, when I live overseas, I always in love with, chaos. And I think if you love the word chaos, I think Vietnam or Southeast Asia or Asia in general will be the perfect location for you. Probably Bill and Lynn, I think they already laugh about it. So probably they will agree about that. You know, like I think chaos is something that you expect every day in Vietnam, even though you try to manage it the best you can, but chaos is there. Yeah.
Chris, that leads to our kind of second question today, which is, you know, you've described your experience working, living abroad a little bit. Did that experience actually help you navigate that quote unquote chaos, or that just, you know, career path that you've now had in Vietnam, or were there things
Absolutely. I think, you know, I think the point that I'm sitting right here talking to you guys is kind of a proof of everything that I tried to do for the past 10 years. I think right now, not only Vietnam, but almost every single developing market economy, they're looking out for a lot of people that have, you know, diverse experience, diverse exposure, and, you know, like the understanding of how things run, let's say, you know, in KL, how things run in Singapore. And then, you know, the next morning you wake up, you're handling your business partner in Vietnam. That is start becoming a new norms and, you know, like a new standard. So even if you're like a master of, you know, like your home country, your own location, you know, that's good, you know, but in the future, maybe that won't be enough. That it may be not enough. Yeah.
Vietnam is becoming more essential to the global kind of world and economy. You know, there's news like Apple moving its manufacturing to Vietnam, free trade agreements being made. I would love to also ask Lynn here, going back to our first speaker, about that experience that have helped you equipped to have a successful career here in Vietnam. Lynn, you're actually starting like an education kind of business too at the moment. I'm not sure if you want to share that today, but you obviously kind of seen that there's a need for these kind of things. You know, you've had an MBA, you've worked in super high intense pressure organizations in the US, and you came to Vietnam. You probably had some of the same level of pressure in a good way. Did that really equip you for what you kind of expected in Vietnam or experienced?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure if my past experiences equipped me in particular for Vietnam, but I think it equipped me for that chaos that Chris was talking about. I think it's organized chaos, the way I like to think about it. You know, Vietnam is a country that is growing rapidly, but then within that growth and within all the motorbikes swinging around, it's also a country that numbers its trees. If you look at all the trees, there's numbers on them. So there's always, you know, this underlying organization to everything. And so I think based on my prior experiences, it's really all about trying to figure out what skill sets you have that can apply in any particular situation, right? And so, yes, as I mentioned right now, I'm trying to work on a training program or providing training services to corporations and to individuals. Really identifying the need for filling that skills gap, right? And what we found is there's a gap between university and about manager level, where people learn theory in university, and then they don't quite know how to apply that theory or know quite how to manage a project or get something from concept through to product. And so we're really trying to figure out how do you kind of create a step-by-step process for things that could be considered a soft skill, such as networking or communications, right? Because everything can be done, but you either learn it the hard way, like I did over the past 20 years, going to networking events or trying to stand up and do a presentation and failing miserably, and then sitting down and thinking about all the ways you failed and then hopefully you don't do it again. Or if I can write all that down now and teach somebody, then they don't have to learn the hard way. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is the prior experiences combined with what I've learned in Vietnam, trying to create it into an organized fashion. So there's chaos in your career and try to organize it so that people can learn from it.
Excellent. I want to move it over to Tracy too. Tracy, you've had a career not only that you've built for yourself and you've learned throughout your own career. You interview probably hundreds of people a year, if not even more than that yourself. In your experience, maybe you can share a bit too, but of the people that you're interviewing and hiring at a place like Shopee, do you find that experience overseas helps them to be successful in Vietnam?
Definitely. So when I joined Shopee at the beginning, we have mostly local employees. that we hire locally. Eventually, we have like more like Vietnamese people coming from overseas. So when interviewing them, I can share my experience. I can resonate with them, like how is it moving from like an international environment, going back to Vietnam and work in Vietnam. And then starting this year, we are like planning to hire like foreigners to the company too. And then again, I think like when we have people coming from different backgrounds with international exposure from different countries, that we have that kind of experience to share to our candidates, like, hey, so how it is to move to a totally different country to work, and then how, and after that, once we hire them, how to integrate them into the organization. So, and then not to mention that, like with my experience working overseas, I kind of like create a network of like candidates or friends all over the places. Like, yeah, wherever I need some help, I just reach out to people anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the McKinsey network is incredible to access to people, and they know a lot of people too. We have a podcast coming out with the managing partner of McKinsey next week, actually.
Yes, I've seen that.
Well, awesome. You know, that's wraps up this question. I want to move to the third one here, and we're going to start with Bill. You know, what did you expect the experience being away from home to be like, and did the reality meet your expectations? Bill, you moved away from Vietnam when you were 10, lived in France for a very long time, it sounds like, and you moved back to Vietnam, only expecting to stay a few years. What was at that 3-year mark? What motivated you to stay? What the reality of being in Vietnam, you know, what allowed you to make that decision?
Yeah, so basically did it meet my expectations of the first 2 years that I was in Vietnam was really chaos and organized chaos. How I can navigate within the organized chaos. Because initially, when I was back, I was working directly in Hanoi, not even in Ho Chi Minh. I have difficulties to speak Vietnamese to my own Vietnamese people, and it was quite harsh. And you know, the background that all of us have is more foreigner. So when you speak to people, when you manage them and communicate them, it's unknowable way. So they have to learn your way, and you have to teach them your way and learn their way as well. So there was really complicated. But I think that at the end of the 3 years mark, I was finding that the balance on what if I was in France 3 years later? If I stay in France 3 years later, I was at the same level in Vietnam. So I did catch up really quickly in starting my new career in Vietnam. And after I think 3 years, I was 2 years already or back to my level in France. So that's just one of the reasons. The second reason, like you mentioned, one of the key reasons is the environment things, the society stuff. Things move really, very much more faster in Vietnam. You want to do something, you have it. Just if you have opportunities, like example, if you want to build a venture, if you want to build a startup, I see Chris and Lynn at starting their own business and say, hey, this is Vietnam. You can do it, and nobody gonna stop you. And everyone will be helping you to do this because there is a demand, which is not there in your own country where you are right now, most likely. So that's why I say this. You need to grab the challenge and make sure that you jump the cliff. You make sure that the first step will be the most critical one in your new career. If you don't want to move on, if you don't take the first step, it will be complicated. And I think that's what decided that I will stay more longer after my 3 years.
That's excellent. Chris, you obviously are now managing your own company. I didn't hear about it before, but how long have you been in Vietnam? And I think at what mark can I guess motivates you to continue working on this business?
So I stay in Vietnam until early high school, and then after that, so 15 years old, and so I kind of moved out of Vietnam for about 15 years. So around 30s, I start doing a lot of business that involving Vietnam, because I kind of understand that's my best shot at, you know, become everything, and you understand the market better than a lot of the foreigner out there. So I choose to do a lot of business that, you know, like leverage on that advantage of me to understand about my own, country and everything, because I think Bill and Lynn and even Tracy probably knows that there's a lot of foreign, like money or business looking in Vietnam, try to get in and entering into Vietnam, but they have difficulty of understand the language, the culture, basically how to shake hands with the right guys and everything. So I always put myself in the position that you stay in front of that opportunities, like be able to see Vietnam and then some other economies as well. So at this moment, actually the company that I'm running, we actually quite regional operations. So we have a head office in Kuala Lumpur. We also have an office in Vietnam and also Singapore as well at the moment. But because of COVID-19, so I can't really move too much this year. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, one of the better places to be, I'm sure, to continue managing the business. We're going to move on to today's fourth question, and we have 5 in total today. And this is one that I'll ask each and one of you, every one of you, and I'll circle back with Lynn. What was that biggest challenge that you faced? I think a lot of overseas Vietnamese who are contemplating come back home, they're either one of two attitudes. They're a bit too bullish, too confident, or not at all to the point where they don't even come back. What's one tip that you could share in terms of a challenge that all of us should expect that are watching today's webinar?
Sure. I think this is something that all expats and VKs face. Everybody thinks they have a time machine, and everybody thinks they're from the future. So whether you came from the US, from Europe, from Australia, you think that you've seen it and that Vietnam is behind, and so that's the path it will take, right? And that's the biggest mistake somebody can make, right? And I think luckily for me, my role was as an investor. And so I saw a lot of business models, right? So that was my job. And that's what I did every single day. And so, I saw a lot of different people come in with a lot of different concepts. And so I would say, oh, that's the Yelp. Back then it was, I don't know if people still use Yelp now, but back then it was, that's the Yelp for Vietnam, or, that's the Yahoo for Vietnam, or whatever, right? So, I saw a lot of those. And so when I first got here, I thought, oh, there is a time machine, right? But then because I was in that role, I was able to see many more business models, and I was able to see them evolve and either succeed or fail, and why. And that's when I realized very quickly that no, it may be the same direction, but it's definitely not the same path. And there are definitely a lot of differences culturally in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of the way the system works, the way, so many things work, that it's not the same. And so, I really want to stress that any newbie that's here, and I think anybody that's like less than 2-3 years is a newbie, right? Maybe even 5 years, because I'm 13. So anybody, that's only been here for like 4 or 5 years, still fairly new. And so, just kind of keep in mind that there are a lot of differences. Rein in that ego a little bit, be a little bit more modest, and try to learn and try to understand before you go out and try to, think you know everything.
Super important, Lynn. I can empathize too. I'm under 5 years, actually. I'm like 6 months away from being 5 years. I still feel like a newbie.
Yeah, almost there.
Tracy, I'd like to ask you the same question. That biggest challenge when you faced, you worked at these global organizations, you moved around, not just to like a Singapore, but you moved to the likes of Africa, which just has its own set of challenges. What was that challenge for you when you came back to Vietnam?
Yes, for me, when coming back to Vietnam, I don't have the language problem, you can say, but that was the first time in my life I ever worked in Saigon. I had never worked in Saigon before that. And so I kind of had 2 challenges here. So the first is like how to work in a more like personal way. So, like when working for a big organization, global organizations like McKinsey, or like in Singapore environment, it's completely professional. You keep like work and life totally separate. But in Vietnam, it's hard to do that. So it become more personal, that like you need to spend more time to mingle and then hang out with your colleagues. And at that time I was in like a team leader position. So like try to put myself to spend a lot of time to go, for example, go karaoke with my team. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then another one, I think it's quite common for a lot of Vietnamese people studying overseas. It's like most of the things that we studied back then was all in English, and then when coming back to Vietnam, it's like we need to how to translate all those into Vietnamese. Yeah, because like they don't see me as a VQ. I'm a 100% Vietnamese, so I am expected to speak fully in Vietnamese and writing fully in Vietnamese. So it takes me quite a long time to like sing in Vietnamese and then write in proper Vietnamese. Yeah, like otherwise people will say like, oh yeah, you write like Google Translation.
Right. Like the technical terms and the ways that certain phrases. You mentioned, you first time working in Saigon a number of years back. Vietnam is not all one the same. I think working in Hanoi is very different from Saigon. We have quite a number of staff at Vietcetera actually that have made the move from Hanoi to Saigon, and they say that it's a totally different world. So that's another kind of discussion for another day, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to give the opportunity to also have Bill and later Chris talk about this particular question as well. Bill, biggest challenge for you when you first got back?
I think the biggest challenge, one of the biggest one is first of all, is the management way, the way you work together, teamwork and lead your team. So when I was back in Vietnam, so I was in Hanoi and leading the team for IBM. One of the key issue I see that the people from Vietnam study in the way of they have to learn everything by the book. There's no practical way of think out of the box or giving their own opinion. So when you come in, I think as foreigner, we are used to give our own opinion. So you raise your voice when you see things bad or good, etc. So that's why it's one of my really key problem was how to make sure that my staff or people that work around me speak up when they meet issue or when they have ideas. That's the most important. So a lot of fault there, a lot of different ways. And again, my Vietnamese at this time was what they call a broken Vietnamese. So it's really, really bad. But one of the things that I decide to improve is I will speak Vietnamese to my staff. I will speak Vietnamese to them. They can say it's broken Vietnamese, but I will speak it. And you will see 6 months after I decide to speak Vietnamese to them, they change. The way they interact with me changed. The way they start to open up themselves has changed. And I think that one of the key issue that is facing is not, I think, the local one, but how you, as a foreigner coming back or VQ coming back, how you open up to them as well. Because like Lin mentioned, it's not a time travel. It's not, you are not going back here and you know everything and everything is in the past. No, things move very fast. They learn very fast. But how you make them grow, how you make sure that all of these people bring new value into the business and the environment. That's why I think the biggest challenge that I have faced.
Awesome. That's a great learning there, Bill. I am guilty of the same issue where I don't use Vietnamese as much as I should. I keep telling myself, at the workplace at least, I will take that into consideration. Chris, same question for you. Biggest challenge when you got back?
I think I would like to just add a little bit on the language barrier. Actually, I try to turn that into one of my biggest advantage, actually, because I really understand that a lot of, I would say, international talents coming back to Vietnam, one of the biggest challenge, like Tracy mentioned, is the ability to communicate smoothly in Vietnamese and English when you have to. I think that's very important for you to master that. For me, I think the biggest challenge for me, and it's really transfer from basically my two milestone as a, overseas coming back to Vietnam, which is before my master and after my master. So before my master, I worked for a local bank here in Vietnam, and then I kind of get out again before getting in back. I think the challenge is choosing the right environment that can optimize all of your unique skill set. Because regardless of how good you are, how smart you are, or whatever skill set you have, but if you returning from overseas and you choosing the environment that doesn't allow you to use all of that, or it's turned into something useless, then what's the point? So that was before my master. I work for a local bank. I know a lot of stuff, but they're not ready to take on all of these knowledge, these, passion and, these change and everything. But after that, I kind of understand that value. And then, probably I need to choose a different business, a different models where I can have, freedom in contribute. And, like they really take on a lot of things that I recommend, for example. So be able to choose the right environment is also very important as well. Yeah.
Excellent. We're going to wrap up today's webinar with one last question. It's more of an industry question. So not specifically your experience, but maybe working in the industries that you're in. I'm going to start with Bill, because insurance, it's a centuries old business. AIA, though, is known for digital innovation. I mean, you're CTO, so hopefully you should be able to speak to that. Please share with us, how has it evolved since you've started in the role, or even when AI got here and so far?
Just speak up about the AIA. I don't go back to my full experience in Vietnam, but about AIA. AIA is a 100 years old company, and it's really old. It's all of the technology was old, at least 15 to 20 years old. They didn't change. They didn't catch up the digital trend. They didn't change anything. So one of the first things that I coming in was I did make a really a simple status where we are, where we want to be. There was a huge gap that you can't fill in if you do only change management. So one of the things that I did is I give up the change management. I say I will build something new. That is the new way of working. And we need to build on top of something new to build the future. So what I did is I bring up all of my experiences around the startup, the agile design thinking, new way of operating to put in to make sure that people are working by themselves. They have their own idea. They have to drive like they own their own business, their own product and products, which is crazy at this time because at this time, if you remember in the technology side, they're always working on waterfall. It means that I tell you to do A, you do A. That's all. You don't question it. So this was the biggest challenge that I had is to build up the new team. But when you build up the new team, you need to have new mindset, new skill set, and new people coming in as well. Because you can transform, you can change people if they join you into the adventure for the new structure. But most of the time, people will not accept the change. So I let them go. But I build on top of my team where I use a lot of skill set from foreigner. So a lot of VQ or a lot of people that's working has experience in other country. They're coming back. I build on top of it. And with an initial team of around 30 people, now we have more than 140 people working on this. And they have a lot of outsider third-party vendors that incorporate and they lead their own projects without even me involving most of the time. I only do the strategy things and the budgeting. But the most important things I think is to give people ownership, to make them understand it and make sure that people are equipped with enough power, enough responsibility to drive the project to make sure that we deliver the transformation. And IA in the next 3 years is going to the second phase where we do a lot of transformational things where we not only embark on the agility or the startup mindset within the IT side. We're now doing all of this into the enterprise, what we call organization of the future, where we embark the agility into the business, the enterprise, the full enterprise side. So in which we are targeting to have around 15% of our own staff, the full staff, to be agile in the new way of working. That is the future of AI. And that's how we're not only doing the transformation from the technology side, but we're doing the transformation on the new way of operating for an insurance company. And how can we transform the process? How can we make it simpler, faster, connected, and make sure that we deliver not only the customer services, but bring more value to the customer. Because we talk about a lot of customer services, customer experience, but for me, it's already the past. Now is how you bring this value to the customer in an insurance industry. which is much more complicated.
Excellent. Yeah, it's I'm sure a lot of paper-driven stuff too, not just mindset, but transformation at an infrastructure level. By the way, guys, this is a big recruitment pitch for all of you guys speaking here today. So please talk more about what you guys are up to. I'm going to move it to Tracy. Tracy's got an enormous KPI to hire a bunch of people at Shopee. So here's your moment, Tracy. Tracy, Shopee is much more than e-commerce. You know, it's not just click, 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 and you get what you got. There's payments, there's logistics involved, all these different things. How has e-commerce evolved and adapted to Vietnam's growth over the last few years?
Yeah. So when I first worked in e-commerce about 5-6 years ago, it was just in Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi. But now we could see that e-commerce is everywhere. I still remember about 2 years ago, I traveled to a very remote village in Quảng Bình, and I saw a delivery guy from a third-party logistics company delivering our parcel to that village with about more than 100 homes in that area. And I was amazed that like e-commerce can reach to a very, very remote place like that in Vietnam. And so over the years, not just e-commerce, we evolved into like a platform with integrated payment solutions that like is seamless payment and then like all logistics together as the full package in e-commerce. And so especially last year during the COVID time, we could see that like the work that we do would help our sellers especially to continue their business. Otherwise, they had to shut down due to COVID. But with e-commerce, they can continue selling and reaching out to more buyers. So that was one of the, one of the meaningful moments in e-commerce career for all of us. During this time when everyone has a tough time, we run our business, but at the same time, we help our sellers in general.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Tracy, and that story about even the most remote villages and provinces getting access to this new age of commerce in Vietnam. Lynn, education, but also investment side, pick one of the two or both. Would love to hear from you how that scene has changed over the last decade.
Sure. Let's see. Well, as far as startups, when I first got here, there was basically nothing. There were two funds. I worked for one of the two. And, the entrepreneurs were still very young and naive. Sometimes you talk to the parents, shout out to the parents that being an entrepreneur is a real job, and then now fast forward 13 years and you have people who are now multiple time founders. There are, every type of fund along the entire spectrum from angel investors to incubating programs all the way up to Series B, A, B, and potentially even C. A lot of funds are coming out from within the region coming into Vietnam, but also quite a few funds also based in Vietnam. So within the startup space, that's grown quite a bit with much more higher skill levels and maturity levels within all levels, within all players within the industry. So then I guess within education, I guess this is new to me. I'm relatively new to this sector, but I think there's definitely a need for it. I think when you look at the corporate side, right? So I'm not talking K through 12. I'm thinking more of, once you've officially graduated and you're kind of in the workforce, there's still a large portion of that population that's still kind of struggling, not really sure where they're going with their lives, with their careers. And when I look back to me in my 20s, I was probably the same way too. So it's not really about being in Vietnam. It's really about being in your 20s, right? And so I think what I'm focusing on is a little bit of both the intangible and the tangible. So on the tangible side is the business training. And then on the other side, it's all about motivation and mindset, right? It's, before you can do something successful, you have to really think about it. You have to see it in your mind. And really be able to visualize yourself achieving that and then creating the motivation to go out and do it. Because a lot of times succeeding is about working hard and being able to work hard and maintain that's really hard. And so I'm trying to figure out, well, how can we create programs or create different tips and hints that people can do on a daily basis to really help them kind of keep working, keep going for it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Vietnam, I think Bill or someone else mentioned it too. It's a great place for by the books kind of training, but when it comes to soft skills and like things like confidence, public speaking, or even mindset transformation, it's obviously a gap in the market per se. So I'm excited to hear that. And Vietcetra's worked with Lynn before too. Highly recommend that. Last question here for Chris. I mean, your industry is so new, so it's hard to say, but like just tech in general, like how, maybe you can measure it by 6 months instead of like 10 years, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that last question. And you should unmute yourself too, Chris. There you go.
Yes. So I think when it comes to blockchain, I think to a lot of general audience, always should break it into two. One, which is blockchain as a technology, and the other one is cryptocurrency, crypto, right? Because a lot of people, when they heard of blockchain, they're like crypto. So Chris is doing something crypto. Yeah, this is not the case. So perhaps I give the some indication for both, for the next 6 months, maybe. So I think for blockchain as a technology, it's still very new. As House already mentioned in the beginning. So far as I know, a few very big corporations in Vietnam start flirting with it, start exploring with it, but be able to really try on a very meaningful basics is still a bit far ahead, especially on the, let's say, I would say insurance and even financial side of the industry, because those two industries are very traditional, have a lot of different complex system that may require a lot of, redoing, the infrastructure and foundation before they can start attacking or, taking something like blockchain within their system. But some other industry which fairly, still open for everything, like agriculture, supply chain would be a more beneficial, industry to take on this, solution. For example, we were able to provide a few traceability cases for a lot of the, fruit producer here in Vietnam and even in Malaysia as well. We have a few international cases. Yeah. But then if we're talking about crypto, so for FYI for our general audience, cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin are not legal tender in Vietnam. So basically you can't really use that to buy a house or pay for anything. That's illegal. You can buy it and then store it, as your, personal collection, saving, whatever, but do not use it as a payment tender. I think, for the past few weeks, Bitcoin has been on a very exciting and, fascinating move to a lot of people, up to the point that, I think your neighbor, your 80 years old neighbor also asks you about, how you know about Bitcoin, or Lynn, about Bitcoin. That's the magnitude of, Bitcoin becoming so big, much bigger. And they have a tendency to go very big at the end of the year, like during Christmas time and Chinese New Year time. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is also another investment instrument, which will, having being influenced by a lot of, investor fund or anything. So in stocks, I think we used to have we can make that stock price goes up when we want to. Probably the same type for Bitcoin as well. So if you are an investor out there, just be careful when you put in your money and when you take your money out, because for investment, I think it's all about timing as well. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for sharing some great insights today about homecoming, working in Vietnam, living in Vietnam, and what the future lies in each of your industries and careers. Again, we've got 4 fantastic guests here today: Chris from Infinity Blockchain Ventures, Bill from AIA, and Ty from Ty Lin Group, I believe, and Tracy Doe from Shopee. Make sure to subscribe. We've got tons of new videos coming on Vietcetera all the time. And of course, if you want to reach any of these guests here, find them on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'll be happy to reach out. So that's it. That's a wrap today, guys, for another episode of Homecoming. Thanks again. Big thanks to our hosts and guests, and of course our sponsor AIA for making this happen today. See you guys next time.